Today on Investigate TV Plus, parking garages around the country are aging and crumbling, leading to concerns about structural stability and safety. I'm T. Chappelle.
And I'm Lee Zurich. Our investigation uncovered most parking garages are unregulated by cities and states. Plus, we take an in-depth look at what's being done to prevent future collapses. Then,
he said, I got arrested last night. And I said, wait, what?
Sober drivers arrested for driving under the influence without a breath test. Our investigation discovered a common practice between some police departments.
If you show up on a crime scene looking for someone to arrest, you will find someone to arrest.
And we hear from the advocates working to improve the system.
Also, a blind man inspired by his love for music composes songs from the heart.
It made me feel like I could never get enough of it.
In-depth stories that inform and inspire. You're watching Investigate TV Plus.
From car break-ins to being sideswiped, those are about the worst things you might expect to happen inside a parking garage.
But across America, a hidden danger may be lurking where you park your car. Our investigation found that once a parking structure is built, there are few regulations forcing owners to conduct routine safety inspections.
Investigative reporter Chris Nakamoto uncovers why some experts fear without stronger oversight, structural failures will continue.
This is where my car was parked, right next to this beam.
Catherine Cruz is still trying to snap out of a nightmare after the parking garage where she kept her car came crumbling down. Bent beams marked the spot in the Cleveland suburb apartment complex where a large portion of the garage fell in. What's left of the parking structure still standing, now suspended with scaffolding. Months later, the collapse is still weighing on her mind and her wallet.
I finished paying off that car a week before. I made the final payment on that car a week before this collapse.
Her car with just liability insurance left in mangled ruins, crushed when a demo crew came in to remove debris, and getting back on the road has left Cruz saddled with thousands of dollars of debt. News reports across America like this one from outside Dallas, Texas, capturing examples of catastrophic collapses. Another from Jacksonville, Florida, displaying the aftermath. From Kentucky to Massachusetts, Virginia to Oregon, these concrete and steel behemoths are falling apart. Without proper maintenance, concrete and metal weaken and break down, shortening a garage or deck's lifespan and increasing the risk of structural failure. But our investigation found depending on where you live, there may be no one making sure that upkeep is done, leaving you to park at your own risk.
I don't park in certain parking structures. Simple as that. I just don't.
Jerry Braunstrup is the owner of Foundation Technology, a company in Southern California that specializes in parking garage repairs, making him acutely aware of the effects of the unrelenting stressors parking garages face from fluctuating temperatures, corrosion from salt, exhaust from vehicles, and the sheer weight from them.
Cracking, and the cracking usually follows the lines of the rebar superstructure that's within the structure. Pieces of concrete start to chip and fall. Water starts to drip through concrete in places where there were not seams. So it's obviously known that there is a problem.
Damage like this can be fixed and decay slowed, but Braunstrup says that type of maintenance is often ignored because of the cost.
They don't see the value in it.
The consequences of neglect can be deadly. In Surfside, Florida, the parking garage under a 13-story condo complex had been showing signs of distress and fatigue for years before the collapse in 2021 that killed 98 people and injured 11 more. And residents had reported large cracks and frequent flooding.
I mean, if we can keep concrete alive in Rome for 2,000 years, we can figure out a way to keep concrete alive in America that's only 50 to 100 years old, but yet we don't. We tear it down or wait till it falls down.
In a garage we checked, our cameras captured cracks which form gaps, allowing water to penetrate through, corroding the metal rebar inside the concrete. All signs of trouble easy to spot, even for non-experts. But some cities, like this one in California, are now leaning on experts, making inspections routine and repairing their garages as part of standard maintenance. The city of Santa Monica took a proactive step of inspecting all of their parking garages in 2009 after severe concrete cracking occurred in one of their structures. Based off of their inspections, 70% of the garages had problems, requiring $3.2 million in repairs. According to this city staff report, the city found 7 parking garages all needed repairs. Now they've fixed the structural slabs, concrete walls, columns, and vertical walls that showed waterproofing issues. Inspectors blaming problems on long-term usage and exposure to the elements. So basically, people need to pay attention when they're pulling into a parking garage.
Basically, instead of the people paying attention, regulatory agencies need to pay attention. That's a lot more important, I'll be honest with you.
Our national investigative team found parking structure regulations are few and far between. Of the top 50 metro areas across the country, only a handful require parking structure owners to conduct any kind of periodic structural safety inspections after construction is complete. Even then, some only require those inspections for structures attached to condos or hotels, or that have been around for more than a decade or two. At the state level, only New York requires that all parking structures receive routine inspections. In 2018, the state mandated regular inspections every 3 years to look for signs of trouble.
The truth is, unfortunately, it takes a catastrophic event for our regulatory agencies to get off their backside to be able to do something about it.
Following the condo collapse in Florida, lawmakers in that state unanimously passed new regulations in hopes of preventing something like that from ever happening again. Experts like Braunstrup fear unless more leaders prioritize keeping residents safe, stories like the one Cruz shared will become more common. What's the worst case scenario if nothing changes?
Oh, we'll see more collapses. We'll see more collapses. There's no doubt about it.
We reached out to the owners and legal counsel representing the complex where Cruz lives. They declined to comment. The owners have been in court over building code violations the property received before the parking deck collapsed. They'd been sentenced to fines and community service by the city's municipal court, but an appeals court kicked the case back because of errors it says the lower court made during sentencing.
First responders risk their lives to save others, but they often struggle with emotional scars of their job. Just ahead, the human cost of saving lives and the peer program destigmatizing conversations about mental health.
But first, an elderly driver pulled over by police and accused of a serious crime.
It was embarrassing because I had to call a neighbor.
We take an in-depth look at sober drivers charged with driving under the influence and uncover a common link in some of the arrests. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime online. Just subscribe to our YouTube channel at Investigate TV. You can catch stories and full episodes. When an officer pulls over a suspected drunk driver, they'll use 2 ways to determine whether to make an arrest: a field sobriety test or an alcohol breath test.
However, our investigation found some sober people charged with driving under the influence had asked for a breath test, only to find out that some police don't use them. And as a result, drivers were often forced to wait months for alcohol and toxicology blood tests to prove their innocence. In Tennessee, we uncovered multiple sober drivers charged with DUI had something in common: medical problems that affected their ability to take field sobriety tests.
Investigative reporter Jeremy Finley takes an in-depth look at these arrests and the training legal experts say some members of law enforcement lack.
There's a joke around the pool halls in Rutherford County about what David Dutton doesn't shoot.
But kidding me about me being drunk, and they all know that I don't drink.
So you can imagine what his son thought when he got a call from his dad.
He said, "I got arrested last night." And I said, "Wait, what?"
Saying he'd been arrested for a DUI after playing pool.
So my first was just like, okay, like, what could you have done? You're 75 years old. I know he doesn't drink.
But after being pulled over for a missing headlight and for drifting off the shoulder, Dutton was arrested for DUI, booked, and spent hours in jail. It would take 5 months for the test results to come back, showing he was completely sober the entire time.
The stress level was really bad, and I thought, wow, this is actually how I lose my dad. You know, I thought he would have a heart attack.
And the officer who arrested him, Deputy Zach Williams, was awarded the 2023 Top Enforcer honor in the county by Mothers Against Drunk Driving for charging the most drivers, 51 with DUIs, the previous year. By the numbers, an expert on identifying suspected drunk drivers. So how did an expert then charge an innocent man with a crime? And why are we finding case after case of it happening to other sober drivers? Take a look. Not only did Dutton offer up his debit card instead of his ID when officers approached, he repeatedly stumbles during the field sobriety test.
I was just out of balance. Gotcha.
But Dutton also acknowledges his medical problems. He's diabetic, hadn't taken his insulin that night, and suffers from a slipped disc.
So you've been dealing with a disc for 45 years?
Oh, yeah.
Even though the deputy notes, Dutton says he does not have any other physical restrictions, Dutton's son says his 75-year-old father forgot to mention one major issue.
My dad has had vertigo for 10 years.
Here's why that's important. We found sober drivers getting DUIs often have health problems that can impact how they perform on field sobriety tests. William Rose is bow-legged. Bill Shank and Katie Slayton have ADHD, which makes it harder to pay attention to instructions. But there's also this. Before Dutton was even given a field sobriety test, listen to what officers say about people who shoot pool.
Never known a sober person to shoot much pool.
Oh, I know.
If you show up on a crime scene looking for someone to arrest, you will find someone to arrest.
Murfreesboro attorney Scott Kimberly did not represent Dutton, but estimates he's had 10 to 15 sober clients arrested for DUI and believes too often officers feel they must make an arrest, even if a driver acknowledges health problems.
Increased training to help explain to officers what non-substance abuse, non-alcohol, non-drug explanations could exist for what may otherwise look like criminal conduct.
We wanted to talk to Rutherford County Sheriff's Office and especially Deputy Zach Williams, but their spokeswoman denied that request. Writing in part, we understand that in some rare cases, blood tests return indicating no drugs or alcohol. In those cases, the charges are dismissed. But that does not mean that probable cause did not exist at the time of the arrest. Probable cause that made this pool shark sink to a new level of humiliation.
It was embarrassing because I had to call a neighbor, well, my cousin really, lives 2 doors down from me, to come and get me at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell him I was in jail.
Since our investigation, David Dutton has filed a federal lawsuit against the Rutherford County Sheriff's Department, alleging he was unlawfully arrested for DUI while he was sober. The lawsuit accuses the Sheriff's Office of failure to provide training on how to distinguish between medical conditions and alcohol or drug impairment. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says that people over 65 should not be given field sobriety tests because age can affect how they perform. Dutton was 75 at the time of his arrest. When asked for a response, a spokeswoman for the Sheriff's Department said they do not comment on pending litigation. In Nashville, Tennessee, I'm Jeremy Finley.
He was inspired by music at a young age.
I'm good at finding shelter.
Then taught himself to play 6 instruments all by ear. Coming up, how his story has struck a chord all the way to the White House.
But first, they're called into action during high stress and sometimes horrific situations. But who helps them deal with the trauma afterwards? We explore how first responders are opening the door to a safe place to discuss their own mental health. You can watch Investigate TV Plus anytime streaming online. Get the app for Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. They're free to download.
When Americans need urgent help, they depend on EMTs, firefighters, and police.
But who do the nation's first responders turn to when they're in crisis? The National Institutes of Health and Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration suggest roughly 30% of first responders experience depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other behavioral conditions. That's compared to 20% of the general population. And the FBI found about 184 law enforcement officers die by suicide each year. If you're struggling, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 anytime.
Reporter Peter Zampa speaks with an EMT about his search for support and visits an organization offering first responders a safe space to process their feelings.
Away from the emergency room, Chase Bednarz decompresses with a guitar in his hands. The 6-string notes, far from the sounds of a hospital. Chase says the job was never easy, but became increasingly difficult during the pandemic.
I had been shouldering through all of the really rough cases we had in the first sort of wave over the winter of 2020. I don't think I realized how numb I was coming out of that to just to the death we had around us, or to all the negative parts of life that we were experiencing.
Chase says he saw too many 2020 mistakes repeated in the deadly Delta wave of 2021. He wanted to do more to help. He knew more resources could have saved lives.
We were doing the same thing every day and getting the same almost uniformly negative results, and realizing I had done that for 18 months, not knowing when it would end at all.
After another surge in 2022, Chase found the Volunteers of America program Rest for First Responders. The peer-to-peer small group support helps him process the feelings that come from his work.
Or you did something that makes you feel really guilty, or you may feel ashamed. You may start to wonder if you're a good person. So it can really impact your sense of identity, your sense of life purpose, and your meaning system and your faith.
Rita Brock leads the program. She says helping first responders address moral injury is vital for the future of the workforce.
You can't fix what happened, but you can help people process how they're feeling about it so that they're not carrying it all alone.
Chase says the program kept him from quitting. An EMT since high school, he plans to continue in emergency medicine. But now that he's open about the greatest tests of the job, he's more able to be there for others.
I love getting to be a calm presence in the worst moments of other people's lives. I love the teams that I get to be a part of working on this.
The CDC recommends first responders partner together to support each other and monitor each other's stress, workload, and safety. Once again, if you're struggling with your mental health, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988, 24 hours a day.
Up next, listening and learning.
And how many times have you surprised yourself?
Oh gosh, more than I can tell you.
A young man who is born blind inspires others through his music. Music inspired him at a young age to overcome his disability.
Angel Paez was born blind, but over time, he taught himself to play 6 instruments all by ear.
Reporter Natisha Lane shows us how Angel is now making music and his mark in the country and bluegrass scene.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3.
Angel Paez, who was born blind, began his fascination with music as a toddler at church.
I remember listening to all those different instruments and being so curious as to what they looked like, what they felt like, and I wanted to know how to play.
I'm no stranger to the rain.
The music gave him a feeling he'd never felt before.
It made me feel like I could never get enough of it, like something so cool and so different and new that made me want more.
It didn't take long for others to recognize Angel's raw talent too.
They entered me into my first radio contest. It was a Spanish radio station here in town, and that was kind of my first real motivation to play and get good enough to be on stage.
Angel won that contest and later even performed at the White House.
That more than anything gave me the kind of the spark, if there ever was one, to pursue the music.
He now plays with a few bluegrass bands and performs with 2 duos. He even had the chance to record at the famed Muscle Shoals in Alabama, where bands like the Rolling Stones and singers like Aretha Franklin recorded hit songs. And if that wasn't enough, the Carolina Country Music Awards nominated Angel for Musician of the Year and Best Fiddler of the Year twice.
My dream is to just be able to make a living out of it. I just want to have enough to, take my family out to dinner every now and then.
Angel says he's always pushing himself despite sometimes having those intrusive thoughts of self-doubt.
I never know what I'm going to get into until I try it.
And how many times have you surprised yourself?
Oh gosh, more than I can tell you.
I'm good at finding shelter.
It feels good. It feels like I can literally go out and do anything.
He says he just wants to earn enough to be able to take his family out to dinner every now and again, but I think he'll probably earn enough to do more than just that.
I think so. That kid's good. And I mean, teaching himself how to play like that,
Amazing.
So impressive. All right, that's it for us on Investigate TV Plus. I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm Tisha Powell. Thanks for watching.
On the next Investigate TV Plus, educators fear for their safety in which should be a safe place for them and your child.
I've had kids stand on tables and throw iPads at me.
We take an in-depth look at the growing problem of violence in the classroom and the solutions to prevent aggressive behavior.